What's up, everybody? Welcome in another YouTube live show. I am here a little bit later than normal start tonight, but I hope you'll forgive me. Was doing a little bit of local radio actually here on 610 Sports in Kansas City. So this is my second show that I'm doing today, in addition to working a day job from 8 to 5. So just to let you know, things are a little hectic and a little busy, but man, there's just so much going on. There is so much going on in this space. Basically, we have three major headlines, I would say, today to talk about when it comes to realignment and when it comes to what's going on with the Pac 12. One, Apple has emerged, according to the Sports Business Journal and New York Post. Actually, Andrew Marchand, who does that Sports Business Journal podcast, also works for the New York Post. He reported this in the New York Post, but Apple emerging as a major contender there, as it seems like ESPN and Amazon may have cooled a bit on the Pac 12. So, okay. Apple's doing the MLS where you got to pay $99 for an entire year of access to watch those. Is that going to be a winning proposition for the Pac 12? And are they willing to go all the way down that road by putting everything, all the games, in essence, on Apple? If you look at the MLS deal, it is very, very interesting. So we have that. That's part one. Part two is Pete Thamel came out with a pretty bombshell article from ESPN. Not only did Pete Thamel take a lot of shots at George Kliavkoff and the job that he has done or lack thereof, but he also joined the chorus of people that have basically pointed out the tough situation that the Pac-12 is in, the negative situation that they are in. So we're now up to ESPN, Sports Business Journal, Action Network, CBS, The Athletic, which includes Stuart Mandel, Bob Thompson, the former head of Fox Sports, weighed in on Twitter. He's a guy that Canzano references a lot, puts a lot of credibility in. He joined that chorus. So it's just everybody, man. I mean, it is literally everybody outside of Utah fans and John Wilner and John Canzano that seem willing to really point this out right now. The situation, the reality of the situation that the Pac-12 is in at the moment. So there is all of that. But included in the Thamel article is a little nugget about Amazon potentially redirecting some of their dollars here. And maybe if it doesn't go to the Pac-12, it turns around to help the Big 12 subsidize taking in 4 corner schools. Now, that's a hell of a juicy nugget dropped by Mr. Thamel. So there's a lot going on here, man. There is a lot going on here. We're going to cover it all. I've got the Bob Thompson quote from Twitter, in addition to the Thamel article, the Marchand article about Apple. There were even pretty juicy updates about the ACC in Pete Thamel's article, which is a league that does not get talked about a lot right now because its TV deal is not up until 2036. But it probably deserves a little bit more coverage than it is getting. John Wilner did an update and a story where he quoted Washington State President Kirk Schultz, which is very interesting to me on a number of levels. I mean, obviously, one, that is a university president going on the record here and at least admitting in some parts that, like, hey, there is some uneasiness in the Pac-12. But on top of that, Kirk Schultz used to be the university president at K-State and was the university president at K-State when conference realignment happened last time back in like 2010, 2011. So, as a lot of people tweeted me, Kirk Schultz mentioned in said article that he still reads K-State message boards and took a little bit of a shot at Big 12 country and Big 12 fans and K-State message boards in doing so. So you bet that I've got something to say about that. That's the backdrop of what we got today, folks. As always, you guys can control the content. You guys can weigh in. You do so by clicking the $sign below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you make your voice heard. It will pin your question or comment up to the top of the chat for me, ensures that I read it, and is a way that you can support the channel. Again, worked at 8 to 5, did a live radio show. Now I'm here bringing you Big 12 content as usual. So that is one way to support the channel, and I appreciate each and every single one of you that do that. I really appreciate it. You can also, for free, just go like the video. Doesn't cost you a dime. That is an easy way to help support the channel as well. Like the video, leave a comment under the video, especially if you are not catching this live. If you just leave a comment, tell me you love me, you hate me, you agree, you disagree, whatever, it all helps. So those are free ways that you can help support the channel as well, and I very much appreciate it. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo as well if you're catching this after the fact and not live and you want to support the channel. Had somebody do that and ask a question about the University of Kansas and their multi-use facility, how they duped the state of Kansas out of $50 million to help make that thing. So shout out to the person that did that. I appreciate all of you guys. Zesty's Retro and Games kicking us off tonight. Zesty Retro and Games says Washington asking Big 12 for entry with grant of rights stipulations. Here's what I'm going to say about that, guys. I'm assuming, because I know I've seen this out there from him, that is from MHV3R, whatever it is on Twitter. I've said this before. Be careful. It's entertaining, but be careful how seriously you're reading into that. I don't know, man. There's just been a barrage of that stuff lately from him, and I can't get my. No, I don't think that's happening. That long and short of it, I do not believe that that's happening. One of the last things that came out from that account today was that Texas Tech was like trying to get out of their game with Oregon because of concern, like get out of their series with Oregon because of concerns about the streaming and if they're behind the Apple paywall and whatever. And like, I mean, Tech is playing Oregon this year. Like, what are we talking about? That's not a thing. So, I mean, I'm not here to try and pick fights or like, you guys can read it. You can believe what you want to believe. I see people tweeting me about the Monty Show a lot too. Man, I don't know. There have just been, who was there was like John, was it J-Boy or something like that early on in conference realignment that had all sorts of wild theories going on there. And he was a guy that Colin Cowherd had kind of endorsed. Guys, I think anybody that's trying to tell you anything specific like that to that point right now is taking a bit of a leap. So we're not going to go down those roads. Now, if you ask Utah fans, they would tell you that even reading into like what Pete Thamel is saying, what Dennis Dodd is saying, what Stuart Mandel said in The Athletic, again, Pac-12 homer, Pac-12 guy, that reading into what they're saying is a bridge too far, which I think is stupid. But that is what they will tell you. I'm not going to go what I deem to be a bridge too far, which is to dive totally into that speculation from accounts like that. So it's very entertaining. I follow it, not trying to totally hate, but I think you got to just take it for what it is. So that's what I would say about that. That's what I would say about that. Again, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something to donate, weigh in tonight here on the chat. That's how you make your voice heard and is a way to support the channel. So here's what we got. We're going to start with the Apple story. This is from Andrew Marchand of the New York Post and Sports Business Journal. He's on that Sports Business Journal podcast with John Oran. He says Apple TV Plus, and you know it's great when it's got to be something that ends in plus. We all know how much we love ESPN Plus. Says Apple TV Plus is emerging as a potential landing spot for Pac-12 college football rights, the Post has learned. With ESPN, Amazon Prime Video, and Fox Sports lukewarm on the league, Apple could end up being the platform for the Pac-12, according to sources. Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff could present Apple as a possibility to his school soon, according to sources. Whether the universities would be interested in a potential all-streaming deal and whether the terms would end up being good enough to prevent schools from leaving has yet to be determined. A Pac-12 spokesman and an Apple spokeswoman both declined comment. Okay. So there you have it. Now, I will say this much. I believe it was John Wilner. One of the responses on Twitter that came out to this was kind of like, yes, Apple has long been a possibility here. Apple also could not wind up being it. This isn't really news. I understand that take because like we've seen Apple mentioned out there before. It is not out of nowhere that Apple has emerged here, according to this report. I would just take it to like Marchand, again, is a respected guy. Like these guys that do this podcast and the Sports Business Journal, like those are respected outlets. So if this is being reported here, I take it to mean, I do, Utah message boards might not, but I take this to mean that conversations have begun to get more serious. And it would play in line with much of the other reporting, yes, reporting, not speculating, but reporting that has come from all corners. Again, The Athletic, CBS Sports, among others, that Amazon and ESPN are getting a little bit more lukewarm here on what's going on with the Pac-12 and what they might do. We have seen that reported, okay? Just because it's not coming from Canzano and Wilner does not mean that it hasn't been reported out there. So this would kind of sync up with that. Like, hey, if they're cooling, go to the other one, which would be Apple here. Apple TV Plus began streaming live baseball games on Friday nights last season. The service is about to start a 10-year, $2.5 billion agreement with MLS, in which it will have the global rights to stream all the league's games with an all-inclusive package that will be $99 for subscribers. An all-in deal similar to MLS's agreement would be more in line for the Pac-12 with Apple. Okay, are you paying $99 to watch a season's worth of Pac-12 football on Apple? I will tell you, I mean, I'm a huge college football fan, and I actually would consider it because, yes, in some ways, the Big 12 and the Pac-12 have been pitted against each other as enemies right now, but I love college football. I want to watch games. I can remember being really furious that I think it was like a Fresno UCLA game maybe 2 years ago, like 2021, that went into overtime. Someone can check me on that. And it was a great game, but it was like on the Pac-12 network. It was the only thing on late. It was a great game, like in overtime, and you couldn't watch it because it was on the Pac-12 network. And that sucked. I want to be able to watch those games. I'm a junkie for it. I would consider paying something like that to be able to watch Pac-12 football games. But I am not your average person. I'm not your average subscriber. I'm not your average consumer. I'm not reaching the kind of audience that you want to reach for the longevity and health of your league. You've got me, college football junkie, but you need college football casual. I see Josh Pate talking about casuals a lot. You need your casual to hook them in here, and that's what you would be losing big time if you're going that route, where it's going to be, hey, all of our games are here, and you need to pay this all-inclusive price, or at least most of our games are going to be here, and you need to pay this all-inclusive price to be able to access them. That, to me, seems like the definition of the risk that we've talked about here this entire time for the Pac-12, which is just visibility, distribution, in a league that has fought visibility issues for a very long time. I think that would be bad, very bad if they were to go this route. Maybe Apple has some crazy sum of money that they're going to throw at them that would make it all worth it, but I highly doubt it. I don't see that coming along here. And Pete Thamel, in his article that we'll get to later, did mention that nobody is expecting anywhere around 40 or in the 40s anymore, which seemed to be what the Pac-12's expectation was early on, and what Cleve Cobb made it kind of promised presidents early on. So you're not going to be getting that from Apple. I highly doubt it. So if it winds up being truly a deal similar monetarily to the Big 12s, but the majority of your games are going to be behind some paywall on Apple Plus, boy, I do not like the prospect of that for the Pac-12 in any way, shape, or form. There's also this. So Jason Sherer, 24/7 sports reporter, runs the Arizona site there. He tweeted out this distribution list for all different streaming services like Netflix, 223 million subscribers. Amazon Prime's 200 million. Obviously, Amazon, that has been one of the others speculated about here. Those are 1 and 2. You've got to go all the way down to number 9 on the list to get to Apple. In terms of streaming services, they are at 40 million. So Amazon Prime, 200 million, Apple, 40 million. Significant cut in terms of how many people are actually already subscribed to that. Significant cut, theoretically, in your exposure and visibility already, if that's the road that you're going to go down. So I don't think this is great. And the Pac-12 reaction, I can basically tell you what it's characterized as already. Who cares? Kanzana, you can only trust 50% of this stuff per our consultant. Apple's always been a possibility. We don't know what's actually happening here. I mean, the best defense for the Pac-12 right now, and I mean, I guess I'll admit it is a defense that is technically true, is until we see what a deal is, we don't know if Cleve Cobb has something up his sleeve. We don't know if there's something that is just not being reported right now. But boy, I sure tell you, especially after reading through Kirk Schultz with John Wilner, they're talking about all the noise. They felt the need to rush out a statement from the presidents because of the noise. And they admit that there's only one way to stop the noise, and that is to get a deal signed. So if there were some ace up the sleeve, you'd sure think we'd be hearing about it right now, or leaking it to somebody, or having the Pac-12 propaganda machine take care of it to just shut some of this up. But nobody seems to be doing that. That does not seem to be emerging. So it would seem to me, logic would lead you to believe that it's unlikely that some magic bullet exists there, but that also doesn't mean that the more likely scenario isn't that the Pac-12 gets a Band-Aid thrown on here. I still think that's the most likely scenario. They'll find a Band-Aid, and it'll be around the Big 12's price, or perhaps a little bit less, and it'll be with much less visibility. Oregon and Washington will sign on for 3 to 5 years, and they'll march forward from there, not feeling particularly stable and not feeling particularly in a position of power. But the possibility definitely still exists that doesn't happen. I mean, it is still very possible, and that is basically what Thamel and others have really tried to point out here. So let's see if there was anything else left in that Apple article. It says, if Apple were to make an agreement with the Pac-12, the streaming service would presumably produce more than just football for the conference. It is possible the production services of the Pac-12 network could be used. Apple can be very persnickety in contract negotiations, which was one of the reasons a much talked about agreement with the NFL for its Sunday ticket package never happened. For the Pac-12, reaching a deal may not be easy, but it is a possible solution. Kind of a buyer beware there with Apple. Like, be careful of getting into bed with them. And I had some people send me details about the Pac-12's deal with MLS, and I know there was some talk there that, like, okay, so they were paying $250 million a year for MLS, this like 10-year contract for $2.5 billion, but hidden in that were production costs for MLS that were totaling like $60 million per year. So it was really not quite what it was cracked up to be from the raw number value. And I'm sure that would be the way the Pac-12 would try to spin it if that were going to be the accurate portrayal of what the deal is here. They would spin it as, hey, we're getting this much per year without subtracting whatever the production cost would be on the back end. Maybe having that Pac-12 network infrastructure really helps offset some of that. I truly don't know, but I do know that on the MLS deal, it looked like some of the numbers on that were possibly a little bit deceiving on the surface. So we'll see. The Pac-12 should obviously be looking into that. They should be looking into all options right now, but these do not seem like very good options. Going from 200 million people on Amazon Prime to 40 million people with Apple TV Plus does not seem to be like you're moving in the right direction. And I do, again, personal choice. You can believe what you want to believe. I believe Andrew Marchand enough, and I think he has enough credibility to know that this would not just be some piece floated. I mean, I guess that's what really gets me about some of the Pac-12 pushback to this. And Utah fans are the ones that really draw my ire here lately because we've seen so much of that, even Message Board Genius quoting some of those guys. But like, what is the motivation for a guy from the New York Post? What is the motivation for a guy from the New York Post to be like helping the Big 12 by purposely leaking and reporting a story about the Pac-12's struggles? That's what I would really want to know. What possibly could be the reason for that? And then on top of that, that Thamel, Stuart Mandel, who's been a Pac-12 homer, Brett McMurphy, Dennis Dodd, like, why all these guys are falling in line with the same narrative. Like, how is Brett Yormark that good that he just has the entire college sports reporting world by the balls and he can get them to report whatever it is that he wants to at the much to the chagrin of the Pac-12 and as a disadvantage to the Pac-12? In that respect, then you would be admitting that George Kliavkoff is being totally played here by Brett Yormark. I mean, there's not really a way around this right now for the Pac-12. Either Yormark is so good that he's got the entire college football media ecosystem outside of San Jose and Oregon, Portland, Oregon, in the palm of his hands, ready to report his narrative and his side of the story here that would cause some instability to try and get the four corner schools. It's either that or what's being reported is generally true and the Pac-12's in a tough spot. So pick one or the other, Utah message boards. Pick one or the other, Pac-12 fans. Either you're being totally outdueled by Yormark or you truly are in a pretty bad spot. And I would believe that it's a little of both, but more the latter, that you're just in a difficult spot. You're in a very difficult spot. Aaron, what's up, Aaron? Aaron says, thanks for the content, Kurtz. Wreckham, how do you feel about Tech's tourney bid? Well, Aaron, I'm starting to feel, man, I've followed my guys, the Gambling Gauchos. Shout out to the Gambling Gauchos. I've been seeing some of the Tech Twitters. I was about to call it propaganda. That's not fair. I saw a list. Let me just see if I can pull it up. I thought the Gambling Gauchos tweeted out a list of teams, like ranked teams that Tech has more quad one wins than. Why would Gambling Gauchos not be the first one that comes up? All right, well, whatever. There are a bunch of ranked teams that Texas Tech has more quad one wins than. It is possible. It's certainly possible. They're going to need to rack up another couple of wins here probably before the regular season is done to really feel good about it. But Big 12 tournament will provide you with a lot of opportunity there to also pick up some more quad one wins. Texas Tech they've won 4 straight over K-State, Texas, West Virginia, Oklahoma. They've got TCU at Kansas and Oklahoma State. You need to protect your home floor. Those are going to be huge games against TCU and Oklahoma State. Obviously, tough road to hoe going to Kansas, but that could be a massive opportunity there too if they were to win the game. I think it's alive. Like I would put it that way. I think it's alive. I think Tech to the NCAA tournament is alive. Doesn't mean that I think it's the most likely outcome that it will happen, but it is certainly possible. And to say that about this Tech team, considering where they were just a couple of weeks ago, that's impressive, man. It's impressive. It's a credit to Mark Adams. It's a credit to guys like Davion Harmon is one of my favorite players in the league. It's a credit to guys like that for sticking with it. Rob, what's up, Rob? Rob says, if they go with Apple, the Pac will absolutely eat 100% of the production expense, and Apple will pay them the absolute minimum. Apple never overpays. Yeah, that was another thing with the MLS deal too. It was set up so like they were paying the minimum payment was going to be the $250 million per year, but then there was a part of the contract where if they hit a certain like revenue number that would be shared. Basically, like if you had enough subscribers and got enough revenue going, that the extra revenue would be shared with the league too. So it could be some sort of structure like that. But yes, I think that was kind of the point of the Marshawn article too at the end there, saying like Apple can be persnickety. Is they're going to be pretty cautious. I think another underlying point here is that for a while the narrative for the Pac-12 is that we're going to get all this money from going streaming or taking a big chunk of it and going streaming because all of these entities want to overpay. And I mean, this is a situation where I'll kind of admit I was wrong based on the way this is played out. I bought right into it. I was like, oh, that makes sense. I mean, they don't have to follow the same business model that traditional TV networks do. So this might be more just about getting subscribers in and not worrying so much about how many viewers are actually going to be there, what your rating is, so to speak. It's just you want to get extra people in to buy things on Amazon Prime. So Amazon, of course, doesn't mind overpaying. They don't have to be stricken by some of the same limitations that traditional TV would be. Here's a quote from the Sports Business Journal latest podcast. It says, on Wall Street with streaming, they no longer want to see subscribers. They want to see profits. Now they have to have a lot more discernment. It's just a really tough market if you're not the Big Ten or the SEC right now. There was a good deal to be had 6 months ago. Right now, it doesn't look like the Pac-12 is falling into that. And that's exactly it. And when we talk about the Pac-12 kind of being out-dueled here, it's that Brett Yormark could sense some of these things, sense the need for stability and just to get it done. And even if he sacrificed a couple $1 million per school, he did it in order to get in and get in line ahead of the Pac-12 now before everything else started drying up. And that's what you're hearing a lot about. Like all these rights that are coming up, it's like NBA, NASCAR. There are a bunch of major rights coming up here that may interest some of these entities more than Pac-12 football. Believe it or not, it may interest them a little bit more than Oregon State and Washington playing football. I shouldn't say it like that. Those are two pretty good programs right now, but from a national visibility standpoint, it's not necessarily driving a ton. So yes, that I think is some of the danger here. Not only your lack of visibility on Apple, but how are they going to fulfill that contract? Like, what do you actually? It could be a problem getting into bed with Apple. I think for the Pac-12 there. Let's see, got to get caught up on the donations here. There's Rob, 1870 GC. What's up? Appreciate your support, my friend. Thank you for being here. First timer in the super chat, so I appreciate that. 1870 GC says, "Go Cougs." Setting aside MHV ER3, who would you endorse? Would you endorse giving Washington and Oregon a Big 12 invite with a free grant of rights exit if they receive a Big 10 invitation? Thanks for your great content. Well, I would prefer that over unequal revenue distribution, which seems to be a door that a lot of places don't really want to open, don't want to explore that. Some think that is going to be the future of college athletics. And I think if it is, like Washington and Oregon are going to be a part of that because they fit into this very unique place where like they're wanted by the Big Ten, but they're probably not going to be additive now that they're making so much money. And they certainly are desperate to get out of the Pac-12. So maybe at some point they bridge the gap there and take a lesser share in the Big Ten. If you were going to have to give them an unequal share in the Big 12, I think you're going to face a ton of resistance on that because of what the league has just dealt with Texas. I mean, shoot. Shout out to my 365 sports guys, but they had Jamie Pollard, the athletic director of Iowa State, on this week. Asked him about having to watch the Iowa State game on the Longhorn Network yesterday, and his response was just, can't leave soon enough. That was it. So people are exasperated, rightfully so, with Texas. I don't think you're going to get people wanting to set up that same sort of a structure here. Now, you can definitely argue that if they have no like exit fee, a free exit here, if the Big Ten comes calling, that is unequal, and it is. I mean, it definitely is. But I'd have to think about it. Like you could sell me on the value of that by just having Washington and Oregon for a little while. And the key part of that is, again, not just, I always go back to this, it's not just having Washington and Oregon. It's also killing off a conference. It's killing off the Pac-12, creating less competition, carving out more of a space for you as potentially the third best conference out there. And paired with Thamel's info about the ACC this week, which basically confirms what we all would think and know. A lot of schools are looking around like, dude, what do we do? The gap is going to grow wider and wider between the SEC and us, the Big Ten and us, and we're stuck in this thing until 2036 with this deal. We got to figure out some way to get out of here. If lawyers eventually get involved in that situation, then you're going to have like the middle class of the ACC potentially available for you too. And I think that's how you want to long-term position yourself. Be the best of the rest conference and see if the ACC will splinter off, and then you can scoop up those schools. So you want to be setting yourself up in that position. It's just a conquer or be conquered game. And the advantage of that, taking Washington and Oregon away, you're killing whatever the Pac-12 is or is going to be with that. So I guess that's kind of a wishy-washy answer where I'm on the fence a little bit, but that's the best I can give you. I don't have a super strong feeling one way or the other because I understand some of the risks there. But I'll go slight lean. I'll go slight lean to yes. I don't love unequal revenue distribution if you were going to go there. And what that would mean, that would mean Oregon and Washington take in $40 million a year. Everybody else takes in 31 or whatever. Obviously the math wouldn't totally work out like that, but they would be getting more per year from the TV deal than everybody else. Christian, what's up, Christian? Christian, I appreciate your support. Thanks for being here. Christian says, have you ever had any interactions with Jason Sherer? Seems like one of the few Pac-12 voices not in denial about the fate of their league, wants the Big 12. Yeah, and I don't even know that. I don't want to speak for Jason. I just follow from afar on Twitter. I see his tweets pop up. I follow the guy on Twitter. I've not had personal interactions with him other than maybe a tweet back and forth here or there. I wouldn't even say, I think you're right. He is not in denial about the fate of the Pac-12 and the situation the Pac-12 is in. I think that's basically it, more so than it is like that he desperately wants the Big 12 or anything like that. I think he's just a realist. Like he sees the reality of this situation and he doesn't buy the propaganda that you get from certainly Canzano and to a lesser extent Wilner and some of those voices out there in Pac-12 country. Like he's willing to stand up and be like, no, look, I mean, the reality is what the rest of the college football reporting world is saying. So I appreciate him for that. But I can't claim to like know him closely or know what his reputation is like in Pac-12 country or anything. All I know is what I see on Twitter. That's basically it. But I agree with you. It does seem like he's just not in denial. I wouldn't say he's like out there trying to overly slam the Pac-12, other than he clearly has some kind of personal beef with Canzano. But for the most part, I think he's a guy that covers his school, and his school, I've long said, seems to be the one that would have the biggest wandering eye out of the Pac-12, basketball playing a large role in that. And he's pointing out the reality of the situation, or at least not blind to it. So yeah, that's kind of my stance or thoughts there as far as that goes. Nate, what's up, Nate? Do you think the conference announces new members at or after the March 7th meeting? Well, do I think they announced it at the March 7th meeting? No, I do not. And thank you, Nate. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate the donation. I see that is your first time doing so. So I much, much, much appreciate that. I don't see anyone being added on March 7th. If you're just saying after, I mean, that's obviously very, very broad. I don't think immediately after, no. We still keep hearing like mid-March for the timeline on when the Pac-12 really needs to get a deal done by, or else it's going to be real dicey. So I think you got to wait it out to that, see what happens, wait and evaluate. And I can't imagine that the Big 12 would be in a mood to add anybody, even if it's like basketball only. Can't imagine the Big 12 would have the appetite to be doing that without knowing the finality of what's going to happen with the Pac-12 contract. Like that's going to be the next domino to fall. They get a deal, they get a grant of rights. They don't get a deal, they don't get a grant of rights. And then everybody else is going to react to that. Because why would, maybe if Yormark feels like that strongly about the basketball piece of this, that he really wants to go get that done if he has them in hand. But I seriously doubt that you're going to see that happen. So I think it'll still be a little while. I think there's still just a lot of dominoes to fall before that happens. Zach, what's up, Zach? Zach, appreciate you being here, my friend. Resident Cincinnati expert here. Zach says, is it realistic to expect Cincy to be a top 10 basketball team in the Big 12 next year, or will they truly just be fighting with UCF and BYU to not be dead last? Well, Zach, I mean, I gotta level with you. Like, I don't follow Cincinnati basketball closely enough to really give you a good read on that. And teams change a lot with the portal and everything anyway, from year to year. But it's just, all I can tell you is this league is a bear. Like, this league is tough. I can just, from my perspective as a K-State fan, like, K-State's a top 15 team right now. They went through a stretch 2 weeks ago to a week ago where they lost back-to-back games to the last and next to last place team in the league, Tech and Oklahoma, on the road. And those are both top 60 KenPom teams. They did not count as bad losses. Like, they were quad one losses to lose to the last and next to last place team in the league back-to-back games. It felt horrible, and you're like, what is going on with this team? How can you be losing to these teams? And then you look at it, Oklahoma's crushed Alabama, top 60 KenPom team, and Texas Tech might make the NCAA tournament now because all of a sudden they've won 4 straight. So that's how tough this league is. I mean, you have almost half the league in the top 15, like, at points. That's basically been your reality. So I will just caution you, like, it is going to be really tough. And even as a fan, like, K-State started 6-1 in the league, and I was like, KenPom says the league champ's going to finish at 11-7, and everyone's talking about 6 or 7 losses for the league champ. And I was sitting there like, come on, man. This team that I'm watching, how well they're playing, they're going to lose 6 games. Well, here's K-State at 9-6 with 3 games left in the regular season. Still in the top 15, but they've lost 6 league games because it's just that hard. It's just that hard. I mean, try going and playing in Lawrence, Ames, Waco, Manhattan. Like, it is not easy. Tech, great environment there. Not an easy place to play. It's just going to be really difficult. So I don't know enough about Cincy's specific position, but I think that will be a pretty rude awakening, I would think, for the incoming schools, learning how to deal with that and deal with it on a night in, night out basis. Jerome Tang, K-State's head coach, talked, for instance, about legs being a real problem in those games with Tech and OU. And that's, the grind of a season. And when you're having to go out and no nights off. I mean, there is no night off in this league. It sounds cliche, but it is so true. And I don't think you truly get an appreciation of it until you have a team that's going through it and watching the toll that it takes on you throughout a season. So it's big boy basketball, no joke. And by the way, I guess I said before, newcomers is going to be a rude awakening. Maybe not so much for Houston. Maybe not so much for number 1 seed Houston. They'll probably be okay. But it's a good question. Good question for sure. Wish the best to Cincinnati. But I have a hard time feeling real confident in any newcomer other than Houston here as of right now, and their ability to compete at a high level immediately in the Big 12 in basketball. John, what's up, John? John Teal? I think it says John Teal. John Teal, I appreciate the donation. Thank you for being here. John Teal says, Washington State, Oregon State, Boise State, and Memphis. When you look at the map, I see 4 pods of 4 and every time zone covered. Why not? Well, you are right there in that Washington State, Oregon State, Boise. That helps you get a little bit of extra coverage in that time zone that Brett Yormark's been talking about. But why not is because it's not going to be additive. And when we say additive, that means adding extra money to the league per team. That's going to be dilutive. They're not valuable enough entities that, well, this is complex because you have 2 Power 5s and 2 non-Power 5s. So the 2 non-Power 5s won't kick in the pro rata clause on the ESPN contract, which means you would not get extra money added per school, which would be, it's supposed to be $20 million per Power 5 school right now from ESPN. You wouldn't even get that. And if you got that, that's obviously short of the $31 million overall because you're missing the Fox money. So if you're following me there, best case scenario with Washington State and Oregon State is getting $20 million a pop there. You're probably not going to get anything else trying to renegotiate the Fox portion of it with anybody. So you'd be stuck on that. And then you're not getting the automatic $20 million bump for Boise State and Memphis. And just the reality is no TV entity is going to pay extra money. They're not going to go out of their way to pay and say like, oh, we've got to get Boise on TV or we've got to get Memphis on TV. That's why. I mean, that's just very simple. I know people like to play with geography and thinking about even like competitive football programs. I said it the other day, like Washington State and Oregon State would actually be pretty fun from a football competition standpoint because they're competitive programs right now. But it's just not moving the needle from a dollars and cents standpoint. It does not make dollars and cents and wouldn't. So even if it makes geographical sense or you think that it fits Yormark's objective of being in that time zone, you've got to be about money too. It can't just be a charity case. I mean, because honestly, like that's what that would be. It would just be a charity case for all four of those schools that desperately want either in a Power 5 league or to stay in a Power 5 league. And Washington State and Oregon State would be the two that would be for certain left out in the cold in the Pac-12 if that league dissolves. And Boise State and Memphis have been passed over in the expansion pecking order, and they would be desperate to get to a Power 5 place. So that's basically why. I can understand what you're saying there with the pods and Yormark thing, but it just would not make dollars and cents for the league, unfortunately. Boom to the Sooner. Boom to the Sooner. Well, I like the way this starts. Should the Big 12 collude into a semi-merger with the Pac-12 that excludes any teams they don't want or need? I just love when it starts. Should the Big 12 collude? I like that. You know, that's just some petty crime. Let's just go with some petty crime. Again, it kind of feels like a charity case to me. Boom to the Sooner. Be helping a lot of schools out, but this is where it all gets a little jumbled because what you're talking about there really, I guess because you said teams they don't want or need. What you're talking about there is the Big 12 just pulling in like the four corners in Washington and Oregon. Or maybe you swap out. I just don't think Stanford ever comes. And Cal, again, their sports teams are so bad right now. I don't know that really does you a whole lot of good, but maybe you would swap one of them in for like a Utah if you're going to leave them behind because you already have BYU. But what you're basically outlining is just a scenario of what the Big 12 is already trying to do. And so it's not really like a merger. And the Pac-12, I don't know that you're going to see like the Pac-12 agree to like technically a merger where they're just leaving schools behind. So I just don't think that's like a realistic scenario. I know that was one of the things. I think that was even MHVER3 or whatever. I think that was even one of the things that he had brought up. I don't see that. I don't see that happening at all. I think that ship has definitely sailed. I think your hope would be that the Big 12 can basically do that, but just by cherry picking what they want there out of that league. And maybe cherry picking isn't even the right way to phrase it if they're not going to get Oregon or Washington. Jason, what's up, Jason? Jason says the Pac-12 is acting like a used car dealer trying to say their car is worth $40 million. The market says nope. Correct. I mean, correct. And really, it's George Kliavkoff. I guess, the minions on Twitter and message boards and whatever are kind of falling in line there. But Kliavkoff, that to me seems like one of the biggest missteps here by Kliavkoff in all of this. Pac-12 right now, a lot of the focus, like Canzano has kind of created this straw man right now with his latest piece of saying like, hey, look at all this damage Larry Scott did as commissioner of the league, which is not untrue. But it's just George Kliavkoff has clearly had some miscalculations here and some missteps that have put them in this position. And instead of focusing on that, it's like, well, Pac-12's presidents and chancellors need to be strong here because they made a mistake when they gave too much power to Larry Scott and he tanked the league and it's put George behind the eight ball and in this tough spot. It's like, okay, not untrue, but you kind of need to move on beyond that now. The Big 12 has been in bad spots before, but then they hired Bob Bowlesby, and even he got into a bad spot at the end, but then he made a swift move, and then they hired Brett Yormark, and they got right to it, and they got a TV deal that's now put the Pac-12 in a rough spot. Like at a certain point, you gotta focus on the here and now and who's in charge now and what they're doing or what they're not doing. So long story short, yes, that is correct. I think the biggest misstep that George has made in this is one, just overvaluing his league and overpromising, because it seems like a combination of the two. Overvaluing the league, not taking a deal earlier, letting the Big 12 jump in front, not having enough urgency really with this TV deal, and then two, overpromising, because it seems very clear now based on the reporting that we've seen from multiple places that basically it's that he was selling them on 40 million plus per school to presidents and chancellors, and everybody kind of seemed to buy it, fall in line, and now here it is not happening. Skipped ahead on me there. David, what's up, David? David says, time to recalculate odds of Pac-12 implosion. Wilner says it's still favorable. But the more I read other writers, it's 50-50 now, more of the odds. I'd still probably say like 60-40, 65-35. Pac-12 survives, but I mean that's a you don't want to be playing those odds when you're talking about your existence, right? If I told you live or die 65-35, that's not really a game that you want to play. So it's dangerous, scary hours, as the kids would say, dangerous territory here for the Pac-12. And I would also understand why, if you're John Wilner and you've been stern this whole time in saying, I think he continues to say like 5.5 point favorite, survival, a 5.5 point favorite. Nothing has technically happened with the media deal yet. So until that happens, I can see you just saying like, hey, that's what I set it at. That's what we're going with. I'm not going to have like a live betting in-game line. I'm just going to stick with the line that I had going into the game, be old school about it. I mean, I do get it. But the reality is, the longer this goes, the more dynamics change here, which have been ESPN deciding to be more cost conscious, streaming networks having to be more cost conscious, CBS, Turner jumping out of this, not wanting any part of it, Fox not wanting any part of it. Lots of dynamics here with the market have changed and made it a worse scenario for the Pac-12 and made it tougher to actually get something done. So that I would kind of compare it to that. Like, some people here want to be paying attention to the live line in games. And Wilner is more saying like, hey, here was my prediction going into the game. This is what the line was. We're just going to leave it at that. And I'm not going to mess with trying to deal with how things have changed live on the fly here. Ryan, what's up, Ryan? Appreciate you, Ryan. Thank you for being here, my friend. And I appreciate the support. Ryan says, love the show as always, John. The Pac-12 looks like the Hindenburg. Oh, boy. Hopefully a Lifetime or Oxygen will give them a lifeline. The Hallmark Channel always needs non-holiday content. LOL at Pac-12 homers. Well, I saw Jason Sherer tweeted something about, what the Pac-12 was going to do when the Apple story came out, and he ended it with, like the clock is ticking, TikTok. And I was like, TikTok, is that a sign? Is that a signal? Like, you're going to get Pac-12 football on TikTok next year? Really, streaming is supposed to be going younger, reaching a younger audience. Maybe they're just going all in on the younger thing and saying, hey, the younger audience wants to know the younger audience really, kids like the 13-year-olds want Pac-12 football on the TikTok, and we'll give you a Pac-12 football in short 30-second bursts on TikTok. Maybe that's the real way to go here. I mean, in all seriousness, like, I tried to take a step back a little bit after, the Utah thing got a little out of control this week, where it was just the message board geniuses post came out, and they're around here, references to QAnon and truck stop conference and all those things. By the way, it's the Buc-ee's 12. Okay. Buc-ee's 12, not truck stop conference, Buc-ee's 12. Get it right, people. But there was so much of that. I was just getting it was like frustrating, and I'm getting worried. I'm like, look, it's very clear. If anybody's QAnon right now, it's the Pac-12 side, because the mainstream media, these mainstream sources, again, included in this, not just very widely respected Pete Thamel, not just very widely respected John Oran and Andrew Marchand, but Stuart freaking Mandel, who has been a Pac-12 homer to the nth degree and left that story pinned forever about crappy Big 12 TV ratings, even after it was kind of proven wrong. And he's now definitely been proven wrong by the TV deal that's been happening here. West Coast-based guy, Pac-12 homer, Stuart Mandel, reported the same thing. Put the same story out there that we've seen now in different forms from every other outlet. Your head is in the stand, and you are QAnon if you're going to say that is not to be believed. You are the crazy side here if you're not putting any stock into that. Now, if you also want to say, hey, I'm just going to wait. There was a guy I was going back and forth with on Twitter who said, I'm just going to wait and see how it all plays out and not necessarily buy hook, line, and sinker into anything until the fat lady sings. Okay, cool. I can understand that. But don't be out here saying that these reports are all not to be trusted and erroneous and wrong because there's some agenda out there for like literally every entity that's not the San Jose Mercury News or a Substack blog. Okay? I mean, just like listen, you guys are putting your faith into a Substack blog as opposed to ESPN, The Athletic, CBS Sports, like all these like blue blood news outlets. Okay? So that's what drives me crazy. If you want to say wait and see mode, and like even all these articles are admitting as much, Thamel, who just napalmed Kliavkoff for a part of this, also said, like, I'll just read it to you. Okay. The biggest signs of panic have come from the league itself. First, Commissioner George Kliavkov and two other conference officials visited SMU earlier this month at a 48-hour advertisement of the league's weakness and lack of self-awareness. Off to a roaring start there. By exploring SMU, the Pac-12 is acknowledging that what it's attempting to sell networks isn't good enough with 10 schools. And SMU, a fine school with modest tradition, isn't a significant value add to drive up the league's overall value the way that USC and UCLA did for the Big Ten. It's really inventory filler in a nice market, a move that was expected but didn't need to be advertised with an administrative parade. Then the league issued the dreaded vote of confidence statement that its schools are united in commitment to one another. By doing it, the league reminded everyone that it could indeed fall apart. Here's the bottom line on the Pac-12. And this is really what I was getting to. Thamel says, here's the bottom line on the Pac-12. The TV contract numbers Kliavkov delivers in the upcoming weeks are paramount to the league's survival. If the numbers are decent, some sort of temporary solution can be constructed with a deal expected to be in the 5-year range, and that's certainly possible. No one is expecting anything in the $40 million per school range anymore. Getting something in the $30 million range, similar to the Big 12, could keep the league duct taped together. Now, as far as the reality of that, he says, but there's confusion in the industry as to how it will get done. Quote, we're going to find out if George has had something in his back pocket the whole time, a Pac-12 source said. Then another source said, if Kliavkov has something up his sleeve, it's with some entity that no one knows about. So he's framing it as like, look, the situation appears pretty bleak right now, but if he does get a deal that's in the 30 millions, which is possible, then there probably will be some duct tape solution. Like none of these articles are saying, hey, it's all over. The four corner schools are gone. It's all falling apart. All these articles are just saying no. But if you look at the writing on the wall, it's going to be a tough putt to find something that satisfies everybody and gets enough money. Certainly, you've already overpromised and you're already back off of what these big, bold, brash predictions were from Kliavkov. And again, the man publicly said that they would catch up to the Big Ten and the SEC financially at some point, which is an asinine statement. With all of that as the backdrop here, you're already looking a little bit silly. The dynamics have changed in the market, which has made it more difficult for you. That's just the reality of the situation, even though a Band-Aid is still possible. And that's firmly what I believe. Nobody here is saying like it's a total done deal and all that. And that I think is, the polarization of how we treat anything. Everybody has to react and think that if any of these articles dares say that Kliavkov is in kind of a tough situation with his back against the wall, then it's immediately, well, you're a hater with an agenda because you think it's all totally screwed and done right now. And no, that's just not the case. So that's my real problem there with it. Other than just, like Utah fans, a hilarious lack of self-awareness on looking down upon truck stop country and all that. When like Utah, Utah is not San Diego. You're not in Laguna Beach. Laguna Beach is not in Salt Lake City. Like, let's just chill. You're much closer to the Big 12 culturally than you are these elites of the Pac-12 on the coast, right? Like you're not hanging out in Palo Alto in your Tesla. So yeah, that annoys me too. Juan, what's up, Juan? Juan just throwing in, and I appreciate you, Juan. Good to see you here. Always love it when you're here, having fun with us in the chat. Juan says, Houston, go Cougs. Just a shout out to the Houston Cougars, having a phenomenal basketball season. With you, Juan. Shout out to Houston. Shout out to my guy, Kelvin Sampson. Big Kelvin Sampson fan here. John Tell back in it. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate another donation. Says from 31 mil to 25.6 mil when 372 mil plus 40 mil is divided 16 ways. However, you'd save the difference in travel. Penny saved is penny earned. I think that is still in response to the I think that is still in response to what were we talking about earlier? It was like Oregon State, Washington State, Boise, and Memphis, I think is who you wanted in the Big 12. You're going to save. I'm trying to even decipher where your math is coming from. I'm just going to disagree with you here. Like you're going to, honestly, like this is sounding a little bit like what George Kliavkov was trying to say with UCLA in the Big Ten. Like, oh, there will be more travel expenses. Therefore, it's not going to be financially worth it for you to go to the Big Ten and make $35 million more per year. Which was just not accurate. You're not going to get, from 31 mil to 25.6 mil when you divide it all. I don't know where you're getting your math that 372 plus 40, because like Boise and Boise and Memphis are not netting you any money. I mean, you're not getting anything there. And at best, you're, I guess, getting the pro rata 20 mil per school with the other two. Like, it's going to kill you, and you're not saving $6 million a year in travel. You might save some travel. You're not saving $6 million a year in travel to make up for even the difference that's there on that math that you did, which I'm having a hard time following. So I disagree. No, it's not worth it. And then what do you? You're not adding any prestige. You're not. I mean, I guess you're adding inventory in the extra time zone would be the thing, but you're also certainly not doing that before you see what happens with the Pac-12, right? I mean, this would all happen. If that's going to happen, it would basically happen after the Pac-12 has gotten some TV. I mean, I'll just be honest. I don't see the scenario where like that actually happens. Because, like, why are Oregon State and Washington State leaving? Either the Pac-12 signs a Band-Aid deal that gets them in the league for the next 5 years, or the league disintegrates and they're screwed. So, like, either they sign a deal and Oregon State and Washington State want no part of leaving the Pac-12. They want to stay tethered to that thing until the band, they're going to stay playing with the band on the Titanic while it goes down, because they don't really have other options. And then if they did need a lifeboat because the league's breaking up, well, the league would be breaking up because four corner schools would be going to the Big 12. So it doesn't work. I mean, I'm sorry. It just doesn't work. Where is Cat Fan in Huskerland, AKA Daniel? What's up, Daniel? Daniel, appreciate you being here. Always appreciate your support. Daniel says, love that my truck stop U swept Baylor yesterday and beat KU tonight. Right now, I would rather be in the Big 12 than in the Pac-12. Go Cats. How about that Sandstorm? Well, the Sandstorm was very fun. It was very fun last night. K-State, their basketball tradition of playing Sandstorm in a big moment after a big run was amplified by turning the lights out, having cell phones on everywhere, adding a little light show, a la what you've seen in a lot of college football environments after a touchdown is scored. So I was a huge fan of that, man. K-State deserves a lot of credit for that. That looked really, really cool. And Jerome Tang, I was just talking to him on the radio show I did tonight, and he was talking about spreading that out to recruits and how cool that is. And recruits need to look at this, how awesome it is to play here. And I could not agree more. It's a very good look for the environment. And I mean, truck stop U, but it really is truck stop conference. I mean, it's just K-State. We can't take credit for being truck stop U. No, I mean, ask Pac-12 country, ask Utah message boards. It's the entire conference, my friend. So Baylor's included in that. That was truck stop U v truck stop U. But I appreciate you, Daniel. Thank you for being here, my friend. Thank you for supporting the Cats. Appreciate that. Robert, what's up, Robert? Thank you for being here, Robert. Appreciate your donation, my friend. Robert says, from Canzano that didn't age well. The Big 12 can certainly cut an early deal, but I think it's wiser to wait 12 to 16 months. Let the value of live sports programming continue to escalate, then cash in. It's a great poll. It's a great poll, and you're basically doing work that I've just been too lazy and busy to do, is to go back and look through some of these old Canzano columns and pull notes like that. I vividly remember him saying that, painting it as, that was the angle for the Pac-12, and the Big 12 got their deal done. And this is, again, why we get worked up and frustrated. I mean, people are like, well, why do you get so worked up and frustrated about this? Or why do you hate the Pac-12? It's because all these Pac-12 dorks were out there saying this stuff when the Big 12 got their deal done. Yormark left money on the table. He should have waited longer. Like, he's an idiot for doing it this way. And now look, every media source in the world that is not Pac-12 affiliated is telling you that was actually very smart. And the dynamics have shifted now to where it is terrible to not actually have your deal here at this moment in time. So thank you for that. Yes, it is. Those old columns are going to read like an old takes exposed book. And by the way, I am going to be in the same boat. If you went through and looked at every minute of YouTube content that I've done since I started this channel, you're going to find some misses there. You are. So in fairness, I will say that. But it's been so emphatic and so consistent at every turn. And combine that with the way that it's played out, like it's pretty obvious. There have been swings and misses out there from Pac-12 country the whole time. So thank you, Robert. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. Daniel with a great question here. Daniel, did you ever find out which 50% was false? No, I did not, because when not only I asked Canzano that, but Andrew Marchand from the New York Post and Sports Business Journal asked Canzano that, basically, we got no response. So, we just got the blanket 50% statement from Tony Altimore or whatever whatever consultant it was that was being quoted by Canzano in that article. Just a nice blanket 50% statement to cover everything and not having to actually back it up with any sort of specifics. All right. I got a lot to cover, man. All right. We still have not even gotten to the Amazon piece of this, the Amazon blurb. Definitely haven't gotten to the ACC blurb. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I know I teased some of that. That's probably going to have to be a separate video or maybe come in on Sunday. I just don't think we have time to get to that right now, frankly, because I need to read you. God, we didn't even get to Wilner with Kirk Schultz. Man, there's just too much going on here, guys. But I need to read the end of the Pete Thamel article here about the Big 12 being helped out by Amazon. So here is a blurb from Pete Thamel of ESPN about Amazon. He says, Amazon has long been linked to the Pac-12 as one of its suitors, and its interest level has been viewed as a potential lifeline for the league amid a marketplace without many attractive open broadcast windows remaining. But it could also have the opposite impact if Amazon's dollars are redirected. Amazon could have outsized influence by putting its money elsewhere, the Big 10 and the Big 12, via a sub-license to help subsidize potential realignment moves. So, AKA this pro rata clause, right? Follow me here. ESPN's in on the pro rata. So if the Big 12 adds the four corner schools, they're going to get an extra $20 million per school per year to that deal automatically from ESPN. But they're not getting $31 million, which is what the overall TV deal is, because Fox is not in on the pro rata clause. But the Big 12 is able to then take that back to market. If Fox is not going to do it, they can take it to someone else and say, hey, will you pay to make up that extra $11 million? Enter potentially Amazon here. They're saying that's where Amazon could come in to take a little bit of inventory and hop in on part of this and make up that extra money. Says, could Amazon chip in to buy part of the Big 12 package if it expands with the four corner schools? Would there be enough inventory for a potential Amazon package to be sliced off via sub-license? The corner schools would provide ESPN access to late night windows, which it needs, and perhaps be a lower expenditure for both companies. So there you have it. Now we're talking about, from Pete Thamel, it may not just be that Apple is the entity that would have to go here and maybe some like $99 per year paywall for the Pac-12, but then Amazon could turn around and say, hey, actually, at four corner schools, if you don't want to sign that Apple deal, we'll take you in here. We'll give the extra money to the Big 12. And now it becomes kind of a win-win for everybody. Big 12 can recoup that extra $11 million not covered by the pro rata. We still get a little bit of inventory. We feel better about this than going all in with the Pac-12. That's kind of the scenario that Pete Thamel is painting there. And by the way, the other thing with Thamel, back to Pac-12 haters and not wanting to buy any of this, ESPN, it's been said by everybody, Wilner, Canzano, like ESPN heavily involved here in negotiations. Who does Pete Thamel work for? He works for ESPN. So you'd think that guy would be pretty clued in to what's going on here with the Pac-12 situation. You'd think he'd have some people at ESPN to talk to rather easily about what the negotiations are and where things stand with the Pac-12, and that they'd be saying, yeah, may not be looking so good for the old Pac-12. Just had to point that out there too. All right, let's rip through the rest of these donations here before I get out of here. Robert says, asking for good vibes for Tech getting into the tourney. Hey, good vibes. Get into the tourney, baby. Get into the tourney. Would love to see Tech in the tourney. And they're playing some really good basketball right now. Probably going to take, I would think, probably going to take 2 or 3, right? 2 or 3 to end the Big 12 season, but I'm here for it. I'm very much here for it. So there are the good vibes. David, what's up, David? David, I think first of all, thank you for the support. Thank you for being here. I think you are referencing an article that I just saw on Twitter right before I came on, but I didn't have a chance to read it. It says, Desert News columnist Dick Harmon reminds us all how the Pac-12 has a history of overbloated leadership egos. Kept BYU out, religious schools, or Cal State, SDSU, Fresno. They're elitist snobs. It's definitely a lot of elitism over there. Definitely a lot of elitism. And it seems to be hurting them now. I would also say even Canzano in his latest column pointed out that like a part of the problem with Larry Scott getting too much freedom and running the conference into the ground was just that presidents and chancellors were like too worried about in-house problems and academics and other things to pay enough attention to what was going on with all of this. So I think that definitely has hurt them. And I mean, you can see the attitude, although there is like a little element of with the Utah thing, there is a little element of like, we always talk about the SEC and kind of make fun of the SEC, how it's like Bama carrying everybody, and then like the Mizzous and Vandies at the very low end of the totem pole there, yelling SEC the loudest when they're getting pulled by Alabama and Georgia every single year. I think there's a little bit of that, right? Like, who's the loudest right now? It's like Utah fans. I do see a lot of like Oregon State, Washington State in the mentions of tweets that have articles that are being somewhat negative towards the Pac-12. Because, well, for one, they have the most to lose. And then two, like, Utah is new. Utah is still appreciative of having a Pac-12 or a Power 5 landing spot in a Power 5 conference that they can win. So, of course, they're going to be the loudest when really they're not. I mean, they're not driving Teslas in Palo Alto. They're in Salt Lake freaking City. So, yeah, I think that element is at play there, too. Shaw, what's up, Shaw? John, as always, appreciate your perspective as an Oregon fan. Well, thank you, sir, and thank you for being here and supporting the channel. Truly do appreciate that, especially in these times. I love having any Pac-12 influence we can have in here. Says, how important do you think academics is to realignment? If the Big 12 added schools, would they renegotiate a TV deal, or would the Power 5 clause offset the division of TV money? Well, I don't think they would totally. I'll answer the back half first. I think it's kind of what I was outlining before. It wouldn't totally renegotiate the TV deal. It's not going to totally reset that, because you've got ESPN locked in basically for their portion of the contract. They took 63% of the contract, so they would give 63% of the money with the pro rata clause to whoever comes in. So you've got that settled. You don't need to renegotiate that. And I don't think, even if like you really wanted to, like, I don't think anybody you'd be bringing in would be probably enough to really milk more out of ESPN on that. But then that's when you take it to like an Amazon or some other entity to see if they would then pay the extra money there. And that's how you would kind of craft together the new TV deal, at least in the short term. Then obviously at some point you'd be signing a new one. How important do I think academics is to realignment? I know it's a huge talking point, and I think there is some level of validity to it, because yes, presidents do make decisions on this, and yes, presidents do care about it, certainly a whole hell of a lot more than you or I do. But I think we are in a new world. Like, I think the dynamics have changed where realignment is different now and the stakes are higher. And so you have to think about it a little bit differently. So I would just say at the end of the day, I think these decisions are going to get pressure packed enough and desperate enough that it will not matter as much as like Pac-12 wonks right now would lead you to believe. I think it matters. I don't think it will matter as much as it has in the past. That would basically be my short answer here on what I think about academics there. I think it's like a nice to have, but we're talking about, like, I've referenced the hierarchy of needs, right, for a human. So at the bottom, like, you need oxygen, you need food, you need water, like the basics of survival. Up here, you need, like, way up at the top, it's like a sense of belonging, like friendship, connection, those sorts of things. Nice to have, but not necessary for survival like oxygen, food, and water is. So like academics is going to be somewhere up the pyramid a little bit more, like, hey, that's great if you can get it, but you need to survive. You need a conference that is going to give you at least a competitive enough paycheck, like an okay paycheck, and a place to play and distribution to give yourself a fighting chance before you can start thinking about then things that would be nice to have, like great academics. I view it more like that. I know exactly what the response would be from Pac-12 country on that, and tell me I'm dumb, I don't understand realignment because of that. No, I mean, like, I get it, but I think desperate times call for desperate measures, and I think that's really where we are headed. I'm over my skis in saying this, but I also would have my doubts that it's going to like cost you a bunch of money in like grants and research. And, you know, I feel like that's a little bit overblown, even if it is what presidents really care about more than the rest of us. So I hope that gives you a thoughtful enough answer to your question, just off the top of my head, Shaw, but I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Calico Willie. What's up, Calico? Calico says, hi, John. Can't believe regular season is almost done and spring football is around the corner. God, I haven't thought about spring football really for a second with all the realignment, all the basketball. I barely thought about that at all, but you are right. Spring football getting pretty close here. Excited to be in the Octagon on Wednesday. I may be there too, Calico. We'll see. I'm trying to work on a ticket for that one. Be the last K-State home game of the year against Oklahoma. It's been such a damn fun season at home. I feel like I owe it to myself and the team and everybody to try and get there. So I will definitely try to be there. And always love having you around, Calico. Thank you for your support of the channel. Thank you for being here. EMA for sure. Thank you for supporting the Cats, man. And finally, Larry, what's up, Larry? Larry says, John, I've seen plenty of BYU fans posing as Utah fans, and the accounts you're referring to are burners. As for the AD, what do you expect him to say? Insults keep coming. Glass house Kurtz. Okay, well, a couple things here. One, Larry, go look at anything I've tweeted about Utah in the last 2 weeks. Unless there are about 200 burners, which I do not believe are true. I do not believe there are 200 of them out there. This is the Utah fan attitude. There are also screenshots from the message board on Message Board Geniuses, which are BYU fans. Are you telling me BYU fans are then going and infiltrating the message boards too and creating burner accounts? Like, Larry, let's just be real here. Is some of that probably happening? Yeah, there's probably some of it. But Larry, there is smoke everywhere, man. There's way too much. That is not all that it is. So you're doing kind of the same thing on this side that you're accusing being done on this side of, taking a couple examples here and amplifying them as everybody and the whole thing. So maybe we're both in a glass house here, Larry, but you're certainly in it with me. And as for, I mean, I don't even know what the hell you're referring to as the athletic director. I guess it's like is it referring to the quote tweet that he gave to me once upon a time? Yeah, of course I expect him to say that. Like publicly, yes, they're going to say that, but I haven't said, I'm about to curse here, Larry. You got me worked up. I haven't said anything about the athletic director this entire show. Yes, I'm sure the Utah athletic director loves being in the Pac-12 and losing the Rose Bowl every year. I'm sure that's great. It beats the hell out of going to the GMAC Bowl or the GalleryFurniture.com Bowl in the Mountain West every single year. So yes, I'm sure that the Utah athletic department and athletic director loves that. I'm sure they love this situation. I get that. I get why Utah feels as strongly as they do. They don't want to lose this. They get to go to Las Vegas every year, beat USC, and then get smacked by the Big Ten and an overrated team in the Rose Bowl. Like, why would Utah want that to end? Of course. And even if they weren't happy, like the public front has to be positive. That's how realignment works. Everybody says the right thing publicly while working back channels behind the scenes. None of us are dummies here, Larry. We understand that. I don't really get that comment, the second part of it. And you're just, if you think that it is all BYU fans with burners, I would suggest to you that you are partial to Utah or partial to the Pac-12 and letting your view of BYU cloud how you are looking at this. And I would also suggest that within that, there are probably more raw feelings there because you're actually in that rivalry. I don't live around Utah fans. I don't deal with them. I haven't grown up my entire life disliking them like I'm speculating here that you would have with BYU fans because you are a Utah fan. So it's a little bit different here. Like I have a more neutral point of view on it. Even if I'm not real big fans of them, I've got a more neutral point of view on it because it's not something I've been indoctrinated in and lived with. Like, yes, it's tougher for me to be impartial when talking about Kansas and the University of Kansas. And if you want to call that out, that's fine because I've grown up my whole life hating them. I have not grown up my whole life hating Utah. So I think that, like, Larry, you got to watch that rock that you just threw over here smashed right through the glass house in your living room. And bottom line, you gave me $12 for that. So I hope that makes you feel better. I mean, I'm taking that. I don't really drink anymore. I live in a legal marijuana state. So you know what? Maybe I'll go buy a joint with that, Larry. I'll go buy a joint and smoke it, in honor of the latest Rose Bowl loss for the Utes. That's what I will do with that $12 that you just gave me there. I said like 10 because like YouTube is going to take a cut of that. So I think I'll have about 10 left. But if you all would like to join me, if you're in a legal state, let's all take $10. Larry, maybe you can pass out $10 to everybody else. And we can all just go rip a joint in celebration of losing to a massively overhyped Penn State team in the Rose Bowl. That's what I'm going to do, Larry. So thank you for the money. Thank you for your contributions. I much appreciate you. And that is a great way to end the night, don't you think? All right, guys. As always, spread the word about the channel. Make sure you tell your friends and family. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it might be. Let them know if they're Big 12 fans, if they're conference realignment fans, college football fans, you think they'd enjoy the channel. If they're Utah fans that would like to pay me $10 to point out how much they hate BYU fans and want to try to twist things, and donate to the John Kurtz Joint Fund, then please let them know about that as well. You can find me on Twitter at JL Kurtz. If you'd I try to be pretty responsive in the DMs there. If you want to hit me up there, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you're hopping in late and you want a chance to support the channel, you can do that. Please like the video on your way out. Leave me a comment. Love me or hate me. If you're Larry, you can leave plenty of comments too. If you want to continue helping the channel while showing your ignorance there, you can certainly do that as well. Appreciate all of you guys. Have a great night. I am going to go sleep because it has been a long, long day. Take care, and I will see you soon.